All right. Alan and Erik, you here? Tom, I see that you are incognito in the chat. You should have a phone call coming your way from a colleague who's going to get you set up. And so we'll just get started. And you just hop in as soon as you're able to, and we'll just pick up right there. So, good afternoon, everyone. So excited. Is everybody able to, Alan, Erik, you able to hear me okay?
Yep.
Your audio's good? Great. Cool. We are ready to rock then. So I tell you what, we're going to get started because we have a lot of good stuff to talk about today. We are missing, at least on camera, one of our panelists who should be joining us here very momentarily. That's Tom Warren, and you will see him pop on here in just a moment. But in the meantime, welcome to our discussion today. We are going to talk about diversifying the tech workforce. My name is Keegan Korf. I am the Director of Community and Partnership Development here at AIM. And I'm here today with three very influential community leaders. And while their experience and leadership spans the entire community, some outside of the tech space, we're going to be reminded just how pervasive tech is. And that it really truly is for everybody. So that's what I want to talk about today. And we're going to pick our panelists' brains about just that. So we're going to get started by introducing you to our guests that we have today. First, we have Erik Servellon, who's down waving at you right now on your screen. He serves as the Deputy Director of the Tri-Faith Initiative in Omaha here. Following his personal motto, continue to serve, Erik does just that. He was born in Los Angeles to then undocumented Salvadorian parents. Erik is a second-generation Latinx American. He earned his bachelor's degree.
Hey, where's your...
Hi, Tom.
Hello. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
No, you're okay. We're so excited to see you. We're just doing introductions here. So Erik earned his bachelor's degree of art in political science and his master of political administration from the University of Nebraska at Omaha. 2 months after receiving this master's, Erik was deployed to Afghanistan as a flight medic sergeant in the summer of 2016, which was a very formative experience in many respects. This deployment taught him the value of human life and what it means to be a servant leader. And I have seen that in action personally with my friend Erik. Today, he serves his community on many boards and committees, including the Eastern Nebraska Community Action Partnership, the Metro Young Latino Professional Association, the Nebraska Unity PAC, One World Community Health Centers, and most recently, he was sworn in as a Learning Community Coordinating Council board member. So very exciting stuff. We also have Alan Wang with us today, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Prairie STEM, a nonprofit working to provide world-class STEM learning and social-emotional learning for everyone, everywhere. Alan has more than 10 years of postgraduate education and 20 years of biotech industry, digital marketing, and clinical experience. He has C-suite level leadership experience in strategic planning, B2B product development and deployment, digital marketing, and SaaS implementation and exit strategies. So his career in biotechnology and medicine have allowed him the opportunities to pursue projects based on beliefs and values to give everyone the same access and opportunities he had growing up. Since 2015, he's led Prairie STEM from its infancy in the programmatic and STEM-centric goals to what it represents today as solution providers, platform changers, and value-add networked organization among its peers and the STEM ecosystem community. He believes in the mantra of a high tide lifts all boats and looks forward to the day when all students understand their greatest assets themselves, which I think is wonderful. And last but not least, we have Thomas Warren here with us. Thomas has served as the president and chief executive officer of the Urban League of Nebraska since January of 2008. He graduated from Morningside College in 1983, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in criminal justice with a second major in sociology and a minor in psychology. He went on to earn his Master of Science degree from the University of Nebraska in 1989 with a criminal justice, in criminal justice and an option in public administration. Shortly after graduation, he joined the Omaha Police Department, where he served for many years and became the first African-American police chief of Omaha. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. It's so good to have you. Like in any panel, we are going to get started with some questions. I want you to just feel free to unmute yourselves and chime in wherever you feel is appropriate. But, we'll go through the guided questions that I have, and we'll just see where the conversation takes us naturally. This is really about you all. Hopefully the most talking you hear me do today was just introducing how amazing you all are. So we're going to kind of leave this to you. And what I want to initially get you thinking about as we dive into this topic, I want you to get started by thinking about the role of technology in our community. How does technology impact the work that you do in your jobs and your community volunteerism?
I'll kick things off, Keegan. I think that's a good question. Here at Tri-Faith, we were one of the first to be hit by the coronavirus. One of our pastors, they went to Spain and they brought back COVID before it was really a thing. And we had a meeting with them. He didn't know he had it. We had no idea what COVID was at that time. We learned it after the fact. So we took it very seriously from the beginning. And this was in late February, right? And March was really when it started to make the news. And we switched over completely to virtual working from home. We didn't come to the office. Right now in our brand new Tri-Faith Center, a brand new building that opened in July, we still haven't had any large gathering of the sort, but it became very apparent very quickly that we had to shift our programming online. We had to meet people online, but our technology was not up to snuff. It became very apparent that some of our internet wasn't the best and we needed more bandwidth. It became very apparent we didn't have the best cameras, microphones, even our computers weren't really equipped to always be online, to really have virtual conferences and the like. We have upgraded since then, of course, but very quickly we realized, we actually need technology for a lot of things to do our work. In my community work, everything switched to virtual as well. The same issues. So I'm glad we're able to get online and to get the technology, but without it, I don't know how we could have been meeting in person during this pandemic.
Definitely. Thank you, Erik. That was a wild thing to experience as we all experienced that transition firsthand.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, how does technology impact the work we do and community volunteerism? So technology drives everything we do, from in-person curriculum in the classroom pre-COVID to exactly what Erik was describing in the last year, to having to convert everything to virtual, using technology initially as a shiny object, and technology as a platform. That was our way to deliver our services, so we would bring everything from robots to drones to you name it into the classroom. And then when the kids saw us, they would light up and you can see them immediately leaning in, on their chairs or excited to see what it is that we're about to do in the classroom. Because of the shift, then we had to really pivot like everybody else and make it so that the technology was not a hindrance, that this is no longer something that was a chore for students, to now be forced for screen time. Where before it was, can I get, on the computer to do something? Now it's, I don't want to do it for another 6 hours or 8 hours. So for us, it's been a platform for us to deliver and through the virtual programming, through the different activities, to use technology as a driver, helping students almost like a 360 STEM or STEAM tour of 21st century skills. We're using tech as part of the journey rather than the destination itself. So as we're building towards K-12 skilled workforce development, trying to get all these fun, engaging things into the hands of students, it's really shining the focus not on the tech itself, but really on the individual. And the focus is more on the person, the values, the mission, rather than the stuff. Trying to instill the why rather than the what.
Yes, I love that. That's, kind of my mantra too, is to always think about and see the human tech, right? Technology is just a tool to get to the end point. It's not necessarily the end point itself. So I really appreciate that. Thomas Warren, I see that you put something in the chat about Urban League partnering with the Code School. Do you want to chat about that a little bit?
Sure. So here at the Urban League of Nebraska, we administer programs in education and youth development, employment and career services. And so similar like with Erik, at the onset of COVID, what it revealed was the digital divide, particularly for our students. And when they had to rely on remote learning, of course, OPS's initial objective was the distribution of over 50,000 iPads, and then the connectivity challenges that exist, particularly in our community where we have some Wi-Fi deserts, quite frankly. So it was really difficult in terms of service delivery for our students to connect, if you will. They had the devices, however, the connectivity, it was really a challenge. And then for our programming, we did have to transition to virtual online service delivery. And so our staff, they were very capable of pivoting to online or digital service delivery with our employment boot camps. So in addition to the challenges with COVID, many individuals that lost their jobs, many of the individuals that had to try to re-enter the workforce, some of whom hadn't completed an online application, hadn't done an online job search, hadn't uploaded a resume. Our employment boot camp, we teach those very basic skills, the job readiness, in addition to, as described, not only equipping our program participants with the skills and abilities to obtain employment, but to retain employment and really exposing them to careers in tech that were readily available. And so we do have the partnership with the AIM Institute, and we do call it our Careers in Tech, where we partner by administering, as I mentioned, the job readiness component, some of the very basic rudimentary skills of obtaining employment, and then reinforcing skills that you have to thrive in that work environment, from showing up to work every day, being on time, properly attired, good attitude, and getting along with your coworkers, to transitioning to the AIM Institute, where they administer the more technical aspects and opportunities for careers that are available in like web development, coding, as well as help desk.
For sure. Thank you so much for adding that. And those are, just some of the opportunities that we are able to provide to the community. Y'all kind of provided me like the best segue into this next question, because each of you touched on, well, a couple different things. We could go a lot of different directions here, but each of you touched on education, especially how COVID impacted education. And you all are directly tied in one way or another to K-12 public education. And I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on how we talk often as a city about talent retention and attraction. And I believe a lot of the conversation is focused on talent attraction. How do we get people from other states to move into our city and come work here? I want to really think about what that brain drain looks like, but not necessarily from a college and post-college graduate perspective. What do we do to keep the incredible young minds that we have in our K-12 public schools here in Omaha to help diversify our entire workforce, including our tech workforce?
And Keegan, I'll kick that one off. And I think it's Alan that mentioned it earlier, and it comes with awareness. So a quick story, I spent some time with the Avenue Scholars Foundation, great 501c3, doing some great work out there when it comes to getting disproportionate communities, education, providing full ride to Metro, things like that. Anyway, I went to South High School. I lived 2 blocks from there. In my official role, I went to South High, spoke to a room full of Latina students, and I asked them the question, hey, who wants to get into IT? One person out of maybe 35 people raised their hand. Who wants to be an auto mechanic? I probably got 50% of the hands raised. Being an auto mechanic is a great career. You can make a good livelihood doing that. It's awesome, but is it South Omaha Latino population, we do have a culture that we do like working with our hands. We do like being repair people. We do like cars, things like that. And that's what they knew. So at Avenue Scholars, we would take them on field trips to go visit Mutual of Omaha, UP, those bigger organizations to get them exposed. And once you get them exposed, I remember we were at Mutual of Omaha, and shout out to them for being a great partner. We got them to do the hardware side and the software side where they would do these activities, and they absolutely loved it. You ask them after that field trip, hey, who wants to get into IT? You see so many more hands go up. So it's awareness that these exist, and then keep shepherding these students all the way from K to 12. And I think we should be introducing them all the way as early as we can, and keep reinforcing these are great careers that you can do a lot of good and make a good livelihood. So it's that awareness, that exposure.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Erik. With that engagement, for what Prairie STEM does, it's that pipeline of trying to get as much early and often exposure as possible. What we're trying to teach today is not the way that the educational system was created 70 years ago. We're still teaching with classrooms. Now it's a whiteboard instead of a blackboard, lecture style with a instructor and then students listening almost as a single direction type instruction. The workforce is not that way. The workforce today is completely collaborative. It's based on communication skills. How well do you work with others? It's based on leadership and management. These are things that are not standardized, on standardized tests. These are not things that follow the MAP testing protocols. So for us, it's all about trying to, we hear this so often, meet the students where they're at. We want to create real world educational experiences, educational opportunities, internships, from the earliest ages. And when we're talking about internships, it's not the traditional ones where you're talking about going to an office and shadowing someone who's working that career. It's having those people in those careers coming into the classroom and sharing their stories, and not stories of, I'm an engineer and I put things together, but stories of, I'm an engineer and I struggled in math, but this is what I did. These were the obstacles that I had to overcome to get to where I am today. And it's those personal relations, the personal stories that really makes a difference in those communities where it's all about access and it's all about equity. And it's making sure that the students we serve in North Omaha and South Omaha and rural Nebraska get every bit of opportunities that my own kids have, whether it's technology, whether it's, Tom hit it the nail on the head with respect to internet connectivity. That is no different in today's world than food, shelter, healthcare. If you don't have access to the internet, that impacts you in so many different ways, not just in education, but in every way that the internet access connects with us. So we're looking for ways, when you're talking about talent attraction, brain drains, and those things, we want to promote new ways for students to not only learn, but they themselves become the teachers through near peer mentoring. So we're getting the college students mentoring the high school students mentoring the middle school students, and then pushing it all the way down, because just like, we're talking about with technology, what they're doing with Urban League, with what you're doing at AIM Institute with coding and programming, it's a new language, and it's not something you can learn when you're a junior and senior in high school. It's no different than any other language. If somebody wants to learn Chinese, I don't recommend learning that in 11th grade, So early and often, starting at the youngest ages, everybody is recognizing the importance of early childhood. I know that there's been a lot of research, a lot of collaborative work done at UNO, College of Education, in terms of the importance of getting that exposure and awareness early on. And I think if we can share that with the kids and then have them see that near peer mentoring through this continuum of excellence in education leading into industry, that might help with some of that brain drain that you talked about. That might help with some of the workforce retention. Kids experience it here and realize, well, this is how I learned about the amazing stuff that's happening at UNMC with IXL. This is what's happening with in 2 years' time the amazing stuff that's happening at the new STEM Science Center, and by connecting to platforms like what you all have created in combination with the STEM ecosystem, where you're talking about the community partners bringing all this amazing families to students, to people that are interested. This is the way I think we have to kind of change the narrative.
Absolutely. Such good stuff.
So I'll take a little bit different approach to the response. Of course, agreeing totally with what Erik and Alan mentioned with regards to education and exposure to these career opportunities in tech, and really exposing our youth and young adults early and often to the career opportunities that are available that oftentimes they don't even know exist. But looking at from a broader perspective in terms of the challenges that we have in Omaha metropolitan area, particularly in corporate Omaha around diversity and inclusion. And when we talk about talent, and across almost every sector, we're challenged with meeting our demands for labor. How do we not only recruit but retain our best and brightest? Statistically, we tend to export more talent than we import. By that I mean more college graduates choose to leave the city of Omaha, choose to leave the state of Nebraska, versus our ability to import college graduates. And it's across every sector. And so when you're in a state with a sparsely populated state that has less than 1% annual growth in population, it's a net loss when you lose your best and brightest. And it's really difficult to grow your local economy unless you really have a robust strategy to not only recruit but retain talent. And to your point, Keegan, how do we cultivate our local talent, the kids that are in our backyard? Here at the Urban League, we conducted a survey a few years ago with the Omaha Chamber of Commerce, our young professionals, to look at and to ask the question, would you recommend the city of Omaha as a favorable place to live, work, or play? And overwhelmingly, the response from the general population, 80% or greater, was sure. They would recommend the city of Omaha as a favorable place to live, work, or play. But when we disaggregated the data by race, particularly African Americans, 15 to 16%, or 5 to 6 times less likely to recommend the city of Omaha as a favorable place to live, work, or play. And so we felt that it was important to drill down into what were those reasons, what were the concerns, what were the grievances. And specifically what we learned in a follow-up survey was opportunities for hiring and promotion, coaching and mentoring, professional development and training, compensation being commensurate with credentials. Was their workforce and that work environment inclusive? Was it diverse? Could you go into that environment and feel valuable and feel valued as your authentic self? And more importantly, to Alan's point, leadership. And when you looked in management and when you looked in the C-suite or those positions of leadership or decision-making authority, could a young professional identify someone who looked like them, that they could emulate as a role model, so that they could aspire to achieve those positions? If they worked hard and fulfilled and reached their full potential, could potentially they see themselves in those roles and in those leadership positions? And then we learned that young professionals, they choose to work where they live, not live where they work. And by that, I mean, it's the lived experience. It's the arts, the amenities, the entertainment that will attract a young professional to an area. And unlike my generation, where our jobs dictated where we lived, they felt that it was that lived experience that was more important. And in fact, they could find a job anywhere. And so when we look at the city of Omaha in our corporate environment, as well as with arts and entertainment, we have to create an environment that is welcoming and that appreciates individuals with their very unique personality and their characteristics.
We do, and one of the choices for options for Omaha Reads, which is put on by the Omaha Public Library every year, is the book You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey. Have we heard of this book, and have we read it yet? I'm going to put a link in the chat to that book, and Tom, it's perfectly aligned to what you were talking about regarding workplace culture and environment and making sure that people feel welcome there. The tragic truth of the matter is that that book was written by two sisters who grew up here in Omaha, and the experiences that they have had in the workplace that were extremely racist and offensive. And it should be like a company-wide book club for every organization in this country, like, as far as I'm concerned. But I think it's super important. We have to have these welcoming environments for people to live and work in. And you all kind of threw like the perfect transition to me once again, because we know that representation matters. And I want you to think about, from a personal experience, a time when you saw someone who looked like you doing work that you didn't know you could do. And this was probably an experience maybe when you were younger, but what was that experience like for you as individuals? And while you kind of speak about that, I'm going to make sure that I put the link to this book in our chat.
Okay, I'll start with this one. And so, to my last point with regards to diversity and inclusion, and what I feel is really a key aspect of D&I is to ensure that underrepresented groups, whether it be racial minorities or women, are represented in leadership positions and positions with decision-making authority and or influence. My background is in law enforcement, and I can tell you that I had role models that were police officers, police administrators, executive level, from a deputy chief to ultimately public safety director. And so it was important that when I had an opportunity to assume a position in leadership, that we did in fact have a very diverse executive management team. And I'm extremely proud of the fact that we had one of the more diverse management teams or diverse departments in the United States of America for a metropolitan agency our size. And that was the composition based on race, African Americans, Latinos, women, throughout the ranks and at the executive level, in law enforcement, captain, lieutenant, but even laterally in specialty positions, investigative units that had decision-making authority. Not only did it help in terms of our decision-making, our strategy development, our personnel deployment, overall, in terms of the delivery of service, it improved dramatically. And I think particularly in the public sector, it's critically important that the composition of your workforce and leadership mirrors, at least in a percentage, comparable to our representation in the population. And so from my background in law enforcement, I can tell you that it was important. And it was not only important that we had a pipeline, a succession plan. And just as I am as proud to be the first African-American that served as chief of police, I was just as proud of the fact that we had a second. And so I think it's also extremely important to mentor and to have a succession plan. So you will have a pipeline of individuals that could take advantage of opportunities that may be made available.
Thank you. That's absolutely spot on and so appreciated. And thank you for saying that about mentorship, because that's absolutely critical. Curious to hear anything else that you all have to say, you know, if you've had an experience that you'd like to share.
I appreciate everything that Tom just said. He to me is exactly what we need more of in our community. And I think there are a lot of great things that are happening. And this is hard for me to say, but I feel like there's a lot more work to do. I feel that, you know, in light of this crazy year that we've all been going through together, there's been a lot of highlights on areas of need. And it's not just on things like Asian violence or Asian hate and those things. In my world, I haven't known anything different than growing up as an American-born Chinese. But it seems like this year, it's really been accelerated in terms of the things that I've had to deal with on a weekly basis. So, and then choosing Omaha to raise our kids because of the opportunities afforded to us as a family, because of the great place that we wanted to basically plant our roots and have the kids learn from the community. It's been a struggle, to be perfectly honest. And so for us, for me personally, to answer your question, seeing people that are representing the unrepresented, seeing people, representation matters to the highest sense. And it's more than just placing people in positions of DEI director. You know, it's placing people on board level authority making decisions, like that was just mentioned. It's having people that are able to mentor lives, not through stories or Zoom from somebody in California or New York. Because here, the students, yes, it's great that we're afforded this opportunity. And again, because of technology, technology is a double-edged sword. Technology brings with it a lot of wonderful advantages, but at the same time, again, going back to the inequities of technology in areas of Omaha that we talked about before that aren't connected, all the things that kids get to be able to excel through education, that people get to be able to work through their careers and professions, it's not available to those areas that don't have access, or to those students that aren't represented, or to those demographics that don't have representation at the highest levels. So I think the biggest thing for me has been not just recognizing the disparity that is ever more present now, but seeing the work that needs to be done. I think we've made some strides, but there's still a lot more work that needs to be done. I think things like, you know, recently a lot of things on the news, and for me, it's been very personal about the anti-Asian hate bills and those things that have passed. And I don't want to talk about politics, I focus on, you know, what we're here for. But the bigger question is, where is the anti-hate violence for everybody else? You know, when we're talking about generations of hurt and angst. So that's where it is for me.
And thank you, Alan, for being vulnerable. And I'll plus one what you have said and what Tom has said. I'll add in a little piece. You know, I'll throw this fact at you. There are about 200 elected offices in the greater Omaha area. Latinos have only 3 of those seats, even though we make up 15% of the population, closing in on 15%. We're like at 13 right now. And so that's one place where representation matters so much in our elected offices. And that's why I serve on the Nebraska Unity PAC, where our mission is to help BIPOC candidates get elected, right? That's why I serve as president of MILPA, which is a Latino YP group. And going back to that mentorship piece, we have identified and already know it's an age-old problem that the Latino leadership bench in Omaha is so small. And it's always the same actors that get asked to be on a board that go help with this committee. It's always the same actors, and that's good, but we need to be able to expand that bench. And what we do is twofold. I tell Latino peers, near peers, like, hey, any professional development that you can do, be ready for it, because we want to be asked to be part of the table. The other piece of it is we have to be ready to say yes when we get asked. That's an important piece, because I speak to a lot of Latinos and Latinas, and they tell me, oh, I don't want to serve on this board because I don't have the skills. What I tell them is, you don't need you don't need to be this high tier, know everything person to serve on a board. The first board I served on was NCAP. I had no idea what I was doing. That's the story I tell them, but I did want to serve. And I tell people, if you are willing to serve, you're willing to lead, and you can do a lot of good. So for MILPA, we do this board masters training, and we actually help young professionals get board training on how to serve on a board, because I want elected officials that are Latino. I want board members, nonprofit side and corporate side, that are Latino, Latina, Latinx. But we have to do our part as Latinos to get our people ready. And I'll just say that piece.
I need to throw in there too that sometimes when we talk about this, it feels like when you're talking to someone who's not a person of color, that they feel that the discussion is a zero-sum game. That they feel that in order for someone that is in an underrepresented minority to step up, then somebody who's in the majority has to step down. I don't feel that's the case. I feel that what we need to do is that I learned from Wendy Goldberg, actually. And I heard her say this in a meeting for the first time not too long ago. And it was along the lines of, America is not a, what is it?
Not a melting pot.
Thank you. Yeah, Erik, you probably would know this better. I only heard it once, but maybe you've heard it several times. America is not a melting pot, but rather it's more of a potluck. That's right. And so as a potluck, we need to celebrate the uniqueness of the individual dishes, if you will, and I'm one that loves to eat. So I represent multiple dishes. But in the world that we're living in, it seems like this polarization prevents those levels of communication. And again, it's been a hard year for advancement of all these initiatives. I think people are feeling left behind. And that's where a lot of things fall apart.
And Alan, I just want to plus one what you said, because when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, this fight for equality, we cannot be operating from a scarcity model. We must not operate from that model. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you so much. This is, I just appreciate everything that you all have to offer to this conversation. Because we're nearing the tail end of our talk today, I'm going to mesh my last couple of questions together for you, because I really want to make sure that we have an opportunity for you to hit on this and to give your opinion. We know that traditionally the tech sector is made up of 30% women and just 7% Black and Latinx folks. Those numbers are a little bit startling to me, and I'm sure they are to all of us that are listening today as well. I want you to think from your community leadership lens and perspective, what are some things that you all would recommend that companies can do right now to show leadership in diversifying their workforce or their own workplaces?
I would say it has to start from the very top. It has to do with board training. It has to do with board, to represent what the goals are moving towards.
I would add on. So let me be just a little controversial. We don't need another pledge. We don't need another written statement that waxes poetic about how important DEI is. We need the top to start putting their money where their mouth is. We already know what the issue is. We already know that we need to be intentional, and that's a big word, intentional about hiring the BIPOC leaders of tomorrow and investing in them to run the next organization, or for them to run it right now. And it's there's so much talk. It is time for action. It's way past time for action. And my quick 2 cents.
I can only echo those sentiments. We have to convert the talk to action. And I do feel that, we have to start early. Our youth and young adults are very tech savvy. They use multiple devices to communicate. Now, I believe it's important that they understand that there are careers, there are jobs and vocations where they can transfer those skills into a career. And the tech sector is wide open. They really need to be exposed to these work environments, the jobs, so that they can realize that they can actually perform the duties and the tasks that are routinely performed in these environments. But again, to the points that have been raised, the recruitment has to be intentional. The investment in professional development and training, the coaching and the mentoring. And what we learned from the YP survey, compensation has to be commensurate with credentials. And we have to encourage our youth and young adults to start pursuing these employment opportunities if we are going to be able to grow our local economy.
All right, I'm going to go rogue. We've got 3 minutes left, and I'm going to do a rapid fire round. And I haven't planned for this. I'm going to ask a question of a thing that a company could do, and you're going to say yes or no. It's a good idea, yes or no. So we're going to start with Alan, and then Erik, and then Tom. First thing, should companies remove 4-year degree requirements for hiring practices? Alan, go.
Yes.
Erik?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Cool. Should companies be posting their salary ranges on job postings? Alan, yes or no?
Yes.
Erik?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
All right. What's going to be my last one? Affirmative action. Legally a requirement for all companies to consider. Alan?
Yes.
Erik?
Yes.
Tom?
Yes, and I think that, not only are we talking about affirmative action, we are talking about genuine appreciation for those differences. And, they use the analogy of a melting pot, whether it's a tossed salad where, you can really appreciate the distinct flavor of each of those morsels. But there has to be that type of genuine appreciation for those unique differences that each one of us bring to a work environment.
Love it. Okay, I think I'm done rapid firing, but that was really fun.
I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I should have really thought about. I could have
That was
added like 10 more. As we wrap up, any final thoughts? We've got about 2 minutes left, and then I'm going to encourage all of you to head over to the main stage at 4:00 for our Code School graduation. But I'd love to hear anything else that any of you have to add.
Thank you so much, Keegan and Tom and Alan for joining us on this panel, and everybody that's here today. One last thought on my end is, I know we talked specifically about BIPOC populations, but let's remember that identity is a broad spectrum. We have to think about sex, about gender, about sexual orientation. We have to think about culture, ethnicity. We have to also have to think about faith and religion. There's no way, I'm at the Tri-Faith Initiative, and people's faith is so core to their identity. We have to make space to allow people to bring that part of their identity into the workplace. And so let's remember that race is probably at the center of it. No, it is at the center of it, but it is a broad spectrum.
I would only add that Omaha is becoming increasingly more diverse, not only in terms of race, gender, and ethnicity. We have refugees, as Erik mentioned, not only in terms of religion, political affiliation, sexual orientation, or preference. I think Omaha has to recognize, and as it has been reported and published, the only way we are going to be able to grow and to look out for that next generation of leaders, the next generation of entrepreneurs, the next generation of CEOs, is to really create an environment that is welcoming.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, thank you to Keegan for moderating, such an amazing conversation, to Erik, to Thomas for, everything they're bringing to the table in this discussion. I would throw in there that change is hard, that through this monumental change, and I appreciate the difficulties that everybody's are trying to work through. I would also say that respect and self-care for us is huge. That now more than ever shines us health, and so everybody is walking their own journey. And I think if we, I love what Itzel said earlier in the comments, talking about authenticity. All of that, the authenticity, the transparency, and respect for me is huge.
Yes, thank you all so much. I just adore every one of you. I'm so grateful for you joining us. Thanks for being vulnerable and open and honest. And let's just keep these conversations moving. Thanks for everyone for watching. Hope you make the main stage. Go watch Code School Graduation. We appreciate you being here. Everybody, have a wonderful
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
weekend.
Have a great day.
Bye.